Welcome to this interview with Andrew Hartley. Andrew was the winner of the 2019 Rotary Clarendon Marathon in just a few seconds over 3 hours. We had hoped to do this interview, of course, face-to-face, but the opportunity escaped us due to the pandemic. However, we still wanted to do this as Andrew has such a unique story to tell about his running career. Hence why we're doing this interview now by Zoom. It was actually me who invited Andrew to the Clarendon in 2019, as I'd met him through his fiancée, Emily, who I've been yacht racing with for many years. Emily ran the half, Andrew the full, I did a leg of the relay, but let's find out a bit more about Andrew. So Andrew, tell me a little bit about your early years in Winchester.
So I grew up in Winchester from about the age of 7, and I lived there for about 15 years, excluding some time in university. And I went to school in Southampton, secondary school in Southampton. I went to primary school in Winchester. And during my school years, I was into music, mainly music, into organised orchestras and bands and choirs and things like that. But I also did sports in terms of I was in the tennis club, and I also swam and did things towards Duke of Edinburgh. So I did life saving and other things like that.
Great. And when did you move out of Winchester, and where did you go to?
So I moved out to Winchester in 2006, and I moved up to Manchester, and that was to study as an accountant, to basically do my qualification. And I've been up in the Manchester area ever since, stayed up here.
And where did you go to university, presumably to study accountancy?
No, I was at university. I went to Bristol and I studied biochemistry. So I took a bit of a sideways step when I decided to become an accountant.
What made that change?
It's a good question. I think in the end I decided that research specifically and wasn't for me, and I had a broader interest in business.
And can you, if you don't mind me asking, what age are you now?
So I'm 38.
And what sports have you done generally over the years, and which ones have you enjoyed the most?
So from an early age, I went fell walking with my family. Every year we used to go up to the Lake District for a couple of weeks, and I absolutely loved that from sort of about 2 or 3, discovering all the 3000ers and starting to navigate and lead the expeditions. I mean, I was allowed to quote lead it, but eventually I did. I planned the routes and really kind of embraced that. And then, as I said earlier, most of my sports at school were racket sports. So I was a reasonably good tennis player, squash player, and then I did a bit of badminton and table tennis as well. And of course, all the standard sports, the team sports that you have to do at school. But I was never a really excellent team sport player, and probably and therefore sort of went towards those sort of individual sports instead. So, and then in years since then, I've sort of dabbled in sailing, kayaking, and a bit of climbing and via ferrata in recent years. And then as an adult, I've really got into more and more into my skiing. And then a few years ago, I started cycling, and I've really enjoyed road biking quite a lot since then. And then eventually I took the plunge and started to enjoy running, which
let me a bit if I might, because I think you've only relatively recently started the running, and you just said you're 38. So how did that come about, and when?
Yeah, so I started running about a bit over 3.5 years ago now. So it was it's almost really a New Year's resolution. So I did quite a lot of travel with work, and was struggling with keeping fit with gyms, and I always had an aspiration to run, but every time I ran, I didn't enjoy it. I found it hard. I found it probably pushed myself too much. I got out of breath. I wanted to stop. And then in 2017, my fiance started to go to parkrun, and she kind of dragged me along effectively, and then I survived my first parkrun, let's put it that way, and then I actually went back the week or two, maybe 2 weeks later. I may have not been that enthusiastic, and took a couple of minutes off it, and then that was galvanizing, I think, so I came back again, and then I kind of, I got over that pain of running, got over and I started to embrace it, and I started to, see my times come down, and there's a competitive element about parkrun, and there's a community spirit about it, and everyone's very friendly, and you see the same people when you compete with them, but don't compete with them at the same time. And it also gets you out of bed in the morning on a Saturday and gives you a purpose. So that was the catalyst for my running. But then I wasn't doing a lot of other running in the week. But then I joined a local very casual running group, and then what that really gave me was the kind of community and reason to go out, and it really just built from there. The more running you do, the more you get used to it, the more you enjoy it, the more motivation you have for it, and then from there onwards, I just started to just do more and more, and then Emily always threatened that she'd make me do a marathon. So because she's done a number of marathons previously, and so she said she threatens to enter me into London. So she kept trying to put me in the ballot for London Marathon, and then said I would need to do one. So eventually I relented and said, right, yeah, okay, I'll do a marathon, but hopefully it'll shut you up. You can stop talking about it. I'll do the one, and we'll get done. So, but in the end, we went to do Brussels, and we weren't supposed to do Brussels. We were supposed to do Amsterdam, but we didn't book early enough, and so we ended up doing Brussels. So instead of being a nice flat road marathon, it was a road, but quite hilly. Brussels is a lot hillier than you'd expect, because you could go right out of the center. So that was really how my running kind of got going. And then once I'd done a marathon, it seemed churlish not to do another one, and sort of carried on from there, really.
And how many marathons have you done altogether so far?
So I've done 3 marathons so far. I did Brussels, and then I did Manchester, and then I did Clarendon. And I was supposed to be, I qualified in Manchester, I qualified for Good for Age for London. And so this April just gone was supposed to be my debut at the London Marathon, running from the Good for Age group. But obviously, as you're aware, London was postponed first till October. It was going to be a clash with Clarendon, and then it's been cancelled. So I am not doing London, but I will be next October.
And what times did you do in the 3 marathons?
So my first marathon was 2:59 and 30-ish seconds. So that was my, the goal, the secret goal. It must be said, it was a mainly secret goal, was to break 3 hours. I didn't really know whether I could or not. It's hard to sort of scale up from doing 5Ks and park runs to know whether you can run fast. But I had a feeling I could probably run around about that kind of speed. And then Manchester was 2:46 and a half, and then Clarendon was, as you mentioned at the beginning, was a little bit over 3. So very disappointing.
Trickier perhaps than the on-road.
It's completely terrain, right? It's completely about terrain. Yeah, exactly.
So which do you enjoy the most then? Do you enjoy running at speed on the flat, on the roads, or the challenge of the off-roads and the hills?
So it's got to be off-road. I mean, most of my running is on road because it's easy. It's straight out your door. It's available. Everyone else is there. But I really enjoy off-road and indeed so basic trail, but also indeed up mountains where possible. But it's a lot harder, and it's harder to get to. But it's just so much more expansive, and there's more to see, and so I really enjoy that.
Fantastic. Yes, rather you than me though. Other than winning last year, what did you really enjoy about the Clarendon, and why won't you be back to retain your title this year?
So Clarendon was my first real fast off-road experience. So you know, I'd done group runs up hills, and I'd sort of enjoyed a little bit of a trip up a hill, you know, when on holiday, for example. But it was my first proper competitive moment, and I really enjoyed that. It was just the terrain and the competition, and it was just fantastic. I mean, there's nowhere I've ever been before where you get to a marshal post in the middle of 3 fields, and you pick up a flapjack and say hello to the really friendly marshals, and then you've got a horrible climb afterwards, or it seems like it at the time, you know, 3/4 of the way through. So I really enjoyed Clarendon for that. It was just so friendly, but it was there was nothing boring about the route at all, which you can if everyone's done city marathons. You know, you're often out in an industrial estate or a boring suburb somewhere. So the Clarendon is head and shoulders above that. And
you'll be back to the Clarendon sometime in the future, I hope.
I would love to come back. Yeah. I as you said, I'm not coming back this year, I'm afraid. And it comes down to really a combination. It's been a challenging year for everyone, I think, in terms of training and goals and what getting ready for something that then's being cancelled or postponed. And I ultimately was training for London, but then kind of half expected it to not happen in October, and I hoped to come to Clarendon, but then I've just realised that my fitness isn't where I wanted to be, or at least my running fitness isn't where I wanted to be, and I was a bit nervous about not doing myself justice if I came down.
And what is your typical training regime, and also for leading up to a major event?
So I run with a group. Most weeks I'll run with the local group or my training training group, but most of my runs are done on my own or with 1 or 2 partners, and most of my runs are easy. I actually do more of my intense work on a bike because I do quite a lot of cycling, and then I mix in either hill reps or track sessions or tempo runs, and especially when I'm kind of training for a specific event, I'll try to do more tempo runs. But that is definitely my weakness, is making myself go out to do the hard sessions unless I've got someone to go with me. It's that extra motivation is very useful.
And what about your aspirations for the rest of your running career?
I'd really love to, firstly qualify for the championship level for London, which is, so I want to break a 2:45, which I think is probably realistic, and I'd really love to kind of push my marathon time down towards about 2:30, which is that's a real challenge for me, I think. But I think ultimately do more fell running. I've been really inspired reading about some of the fell runners, and I'd love to go and do, with my experience from walking in the Lake District all of my life, I would love to go and do the Bob Graham round, which is I think 47 mountains in the Lake District. It's around from Keswick, and the challenge is to do it within 24 hours. So that's a huge objective, but one I'm yet to work out quite how I'll get there. And apart from that, I think the other thing is develop my running towards doing triathlons. So I've got an aspiration to build towards doing half Iron and Ironman triathlons.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for that. Really interesting, an inspiration, especially getting into running in the latter years. But it'll be fantastic to see you back on the Clarendon at some point, and really best wishes for all of your sporting activities, but especially your running. And wouldn't it be fantastic if we can see you running under 2 hours 30 or right at the top of the leaderboard for triathlon? So best of luck.